Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode. I am very, very excited to have Paul Hutchinson on today, and I am so excited to hear everything he has to talk about. He is the executive producer of the movie Sound of Freedom, and I can't wait to hear what you have to share with us, Paul. So before we get started, why don't you just give us a little bit about you, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty.
Thank you, Dana. Super excited to be here with your audience. Quick background on myself. I'm somewhat of a serial entrepreneur. I've had a few successful companies. Retired completely in 2017 to focus full-time on philanthropy work. I was recruited about 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago, to play a part in my first undercover rescue mission, and that one was depicted in the movie Sound of Freedom. My part is played by the producer, Eduardo Verastegui, as Pablo in the film. And helping to fund that mission is being to bring those perpetrators to justice and rescue those children is what changed everything for me. And I knew that we couldn't take 8 billion people to go see what we had seen. And myself and the government agent and a few others looked at this and thought, how do we create a movement? And that's why we decided to put the money in. I'm the primary investor in Sound of Freedom and the executive producer of the film as well. And so excited to share. That's a quick background on myself. I've had a successful real estate career. I've had a successful marketing company, a number of things like that. But now I'm just full-time on To Heal the World. And my foundation is Child Liberation Foundation. You can go to liberatechildren.org, or you can find me anywhere on Liberating Humanity. And that's my social media, everything else. And excited to share from my heart in that can help people keep their kids safe and make the world a better place.
That's awesome. So going back to when you first were thinking about making the film and all that kind of stuff, did you ever in a million years think it would be having the level of success that it has?
Honestly, Dana, that's the only reason I invested in the film. I don't invest in stuff I don't know anything about. Every time I've done things outside of my core competence, I've lost money on them, and I thought, wow, this feels like more than just an investment. This feels like a calling. This feels like something that has to happen, and we had to make movement. We had to get millions and millions of people to see what we had seen, so that they can wake up and say, okay, what can we do? What can we do to keep our kids safe? This is an epidemic on epic proportions everywhere. And it's not just the trafficking of children, it's the abuse of children in our own homes. And we can get into that as well, and what those statistics are and how to keep our kids safe from all of those things. But 2 years ago, it wasn't it wasn't polite to have a conversation about child trafficking over your dinner table, right? And the movie allows us to have those conversations, allows us to say, okay, here with this audience today, now I have your attention. Now let's talk about this. What really needs to happen? What has to happen to change the trajectory of mankind as a whole, of this generational trauma that is happening? What needs to happen? How do we keep our kids safe? And that conversation had to be started somehow. And the reason why we felt inspired to put the movie together was for this purpose, to create a movement. And that's what's happening global right now.
And that's fantastic. And one thing I cannot understand is I want to talk a little bit about the controversy of the film and, however, it taking long and to get out in the real world and all that. So let's just touch a little bit on that. What was that all about? Because when I went to go watch it, I was waiting to see all this crazy stuff, and there wasn't any crazy stuff.
There wasn't. There's nothing in the movie about adrenochrome and eating babies and all this crap, right? There's nothing. Everybody's trying to tie us to a QAnon movement and whatever. And the reason why some of that had happened is that our main actor, Jim Caviezel, is pretty outspoken in his right-wing approach to things. And we included lines like God's children are not for sale in the movie. It's not a religious movie at all, but the reality is big meat Hollywood, some big government everywhere. They have very specific agendas that this movie just didn't fit with a lot of their agendas of what they want to force feed your family in the mass psychosis, as I call it, and you can see it very clearly. For example, the distribution company that we partnered with is called Angel Studios. Angel Studios is they also brought the TV series The Chosen, which is that talks about the life of Jesus, right? They're not a, predominantly Christian, only Christian stuff goes out. No, but they have a grassroots movement audience of good, primarily conservative families that have backed a lot of the things they've done before. And the media did not like that. And they didn't like the fact that we went around their controlled system to take something to the world, to the people, by the people. That's what had to happen, because the systems that were in control, in fact, back almost 10 years ago, when we very first took this story to Hollywood, we had meetings with Sony, we had meetings with Paramount and Lionsgate, and there was some interest there. But because the story was intriguing, I mean, we rescued over 120 victims in one day. It was phenomenal. And there's so many details of the story of that one and other rescues that we couldn't put in the movie. I mean, it would be 20 hours long, 100 hours long. And so they wanted they wanted the story, but they wanted full control. They wanted to be able to change the story any way that they wanted. They could have put, a couple of our operators in a precarious position and doing horrible things right in the middle of it. We couldn't do anything about it. They could have changed the narrative, and we couldn't have that. We needed to maintain control of the narrative. We needed to maintain control of the script. And so I said, you know what? I'll just put my money in to getting the script and everything else perfect until the point where we're ready to film. And even then there was a lot of pushback from the guys in the establishment, as you might say. And so we went with our team of guys who actually helped put together the script, and they did a phenomenal job in producing and directing the film as well. So, but after we were done 5 years ago, we had this completely finished and could not get distribution anywhere. We couldn't. And we got pushback from guys that you would think would love something like this. I mean, guys like Netflix. Are you kidding? Giving us a TV series called Cuties, really? A bunch of 10-year-olds dressed up like strippers, but they wouldn't take Sound of Freedom? What's going on here? And I believe that in a lot of big Hollywood and big media and a lot of the pushback that we got, there, unfortunately, and we're hearing it more all the time from Mel Gibson and others, unfortunately, there's a lot of this crap of child, those elite rings, and they don't want the world to be talking about this. It kind of messes up their mojo. So, and that's super frustrating that we have to fight against that. This is not us fighting against flesh and blood, fighting against the most evil thing on the planet. There is nothing worse than selling a child for sex. There's nothing worse. And so this is evil in its truest form. And unfortunately, we're fighting it on a lot of fronts. And those who are involved in some way, we're showing their ugly heads by their wanting to silence us in this film.
That's just crazy when you think about it. Think about all that, and we all want to think that everybody's trying to do the right thing, but it was so obvious with this that was definitely not the case. And I also thought, and you can correct me if this is anything to do with reality, I thought that maybe because the border being so open and the number of these poor children that are coming over now, that maybe they didn't want to bring attention to that, because then maybe people would be thinking, oh, well, we got to address the border now, but I don't even know if that had anything to do with it.
For sure. I mean, here's the thing, that the border issue should have never been a political issue. This is not about right and left. It's not about blue and red. This is about the children. This is a human trafficking issue. There are tens of thousands, over 100,000 plus, I believe, of children. Last time I checked a number of months ago when the movie first came out, there was 85,000 children that were undocumented, unaccounted for, that came through the border. And here's the sad thing, okay? Our tax dollars are being used to transport children to potential traffickers. No, let me explain it this way. So a child can come across. Let's just say the child disappears in Colombia. This is happening daily. I was down there speaking with the Senate, speaking with the Congress just a couple months ago, and they said, we have an epidemic. Children are disappearing, just disappearing, gone. And it was happening in Honduras, it's happening in El Salvador, it's happening everywhere in Latin America. These kids are just, boom, disappearing. And then what happens is we here at the American border, a child comes across the border without any supervision and has a sponsor, has a number, a phone number, or an address of a sponsor, right? We don't have the resources to do a real background check on that sponsor. So we just say, well, that must be your sponsor. And so we use your tax dollars, put that child on a plane, on a bus, boom, fly them to another place in the US to get picked up by their sponsor. Now, I'm not saying this is happening on every single case, but I will say, think about how easy it would be for that child that disappears in Colombia to be picked up by a trafficker that then traffics that child to the American border, then has the phone number of a sponsor. And that sponsor is another trafficker here in the US that is taking that child. And there's the money that's changing hands. They've drugged them. They've taken away their phones. They have no way to be able to contact their families in any way. They're using fear to control them. And your tax dollars are paying for child trafficking inside this country. It's wrought with challenges all the way across. And that's exactly what they want, to turn your head aside and say, oh yeah, you don't want to look at that problem because it is massive, massive.
Yeah, and everything you just said, I can't even think about that. The fact that these kids are just disappearing, and then it makes complete sense. Talk about a business, relationship that you can create, a bad business relationship, but and then you just send them up here, like you said, with the phone number, is right into their hands. These kids are going, and that's just disgusting. So
Yeah.
okay, so you had mentioned before you have a couple of good stories about some things that you have done, or some some tactics, or that these predators are luring in children, aside from being smuggled across the border. So if you can share some of that with us.
Absolutely. And we were talking just because of who your audience is and your show, and talking about digital security as a whole. I'll talk about a few of those things. So in the last 10 years, I have led or played a key part in over 70 undercover rescue missions in 15 countries. I stopped doing all undercover about 5-6 months ago, deciding that I would use my voice to help fight trafficking instead of just pulling 20 kids at a time. And we'll talk about some of the reason why I made that transition as well. But I'll tell you one story. We were in Mexico. We were in a beach city. The Mexican federal authorities wanted us to follow up on a bunch of trafficking that was going on over the holidays. And it was near New Year's. And so we flew in a couple weeks before New Year's so that we could connect with a bunch of the different traffickers that were there. And the reason why it worked with us is we were a bunch of white guys, right? We were a bunch of white guys that knew how to work the undercover work, that also had some background that would keep us somewhat safe in a dangerous place. And unfortunately, the demand in especially these beach cities in Latin America, the demand was coming from Americans that were going down there for a party, but we're going down to do some very bad things. And so we were connecting with a few of these traffickers. One of these traffickers, he was working for a strip club. He was out in front just kind of selling, giving away free tickets, but his real money, he was using that as a front to be able to just connect with Americans that were down there looking for sex with children. Because as he was passing them out, immediately he said, "Hey, what are you guys looking for? Why are you guys really here?" and stuff. We said, "No, yeah, we're looking for setting up some stuff for a party, for our boss, whatever." Immediately he offered children as young as 7 years old. And not only did he have some that he was selling, but he offered to go to a place called Tenancinga. Tenancinga is in Mexico that statistically, they say upwards of 10% of the people that are in that city, 10% of them are involved in some way in human trafficking. I mean, it's a horrible, horrible situation that's going on there. And he says, I'll go to Tennessee and go, I will pick up some brand new ones for you, brand new 7-year-olds, right? And he said, for $5,000, I'll go pick them up. For $2,500 a month, I will keep them for you. So you're the only ones that get to use them when you come down. And I mean, this is how horrible this guy was, right? And he had a whole bunch of other girls. He had this menu on his phone of girls that he was already controlling, either that he had or he was working with other traffickers. Well, what was interesting about this operation is that because it was over New Year's, a girl I was dating at the time was really upset that I was going to be gone over New Year's. She's like, we want to do something over New Year's. So I was like, okay, well, let's find something to do. And so I said, listen, I'll fly you and, some of your family members down that you guys can have. I'm going to be busy a lot of the time, but we'll have a beautiful little beach resort thing. And so she flew down with her cousin, and her cousin was younger than her, quite a bit. And they were just kind of hanging out on the beach and whatever. And I come back after one day of working with some of the traffickers and stuff. And her cousin says to me, she goes, hey, Paul, look, this is kind of cool. Look, this guy is a guide down here. And he said that he wants to take us to, just go tour around. He's got a boat and he'll tour us around and, for free. And I realized that she had her social media set to broadcast to everybody on the planet that she was in this beach city and she was down there having fun. And of course, because it was just her and my girlfriend at the time that was older than her, he thought that they were traveling unaccompanied, right?
Are you having a hard time finding new customers? A lot of folks just like you in the IT and cybersecurity space are in the same situation. And they have embraced a new opportunity to get new clients. They're doing this by growing their online presence and maximizing the power of LinkedIn. How, you ask? I have a tried and tested method called my Cyber Social Program. I myself have been on LinkedIn and now have over 3.5 million LinkedIn views, and over on YouTube, I have over 750,000 video views. So I can show you exactly how I have done that so that you can promote your organization and become the authority in your industry. And the best part is, I've done all of this organically without one paid ad. You don't need to waste your money over on Google with pay-per-click ads. Now's the time to establish yourself. Look around. The competition isn't doing it. This is your time to shine online before they do. So if you're ready to start your online journey and future-proof your business, please, down below, click the link and schedule a time for us to have a 45-minute call where I can review the exact methodology of the Cyber Social Program. You can also click below to see some of my masterclasses, which will give you quick little snippets of a couple of things you can do right away on LinkedIn that will help with your profile. I hope to see you and hear from you soon.
And that they didn't have husbands, they didn't have parents, she was younger. And so he connected with, and she showed me the picture of this guy. It was the same guy that was selling us 7-year-olds. It was the same guy, right? This was him identifying other ways of getting victims in, and who knows what would have happened. He probably would have drugged them, and this is what happens a lot, is they'll bring some girls in or whatever. They're traveling, they're identifying where they're staying and what country they're in, et cetera, and they'll be searching through the internet and finding people that are potentially vulnerable. That's what was happening. If your kids have a social media, if you feel like you have to have your kids on social media, that's fine. But there's no reason for the whole world to know what's going on. Limit it to just their friends seeing what's going on. If they think that the whole world needs to see it, then you need to shut it down. You say, no, sweetie, I'm sorry, but that's not how it works in our house. Unfortunately, there are bad people out there. And people come to me a lot and they say, Paul, after seeing Sound of Freedom movie, they say, oh, what can I do? I want to do something. I want to help. And I tell them this, the worst thing that you can do is go to Colombia and try to rescue kids, right? You're going to get shot and you're probably going to get arrested. The best thing you can do is have a relationship with your children where they would come to you and say, hey, look at this guy that wants to take us out immediately, right? You need to go home and hug your kids. People say, well, how does that help trafficking? Well, the number one demographic of children that are taken into trafficking, especially here in the US, is runaways, kids from broken families, a broken foster care program. You have a strong nucleus as part of your family, then that's going to go a long, long ways. Yes, there are kids from healthy families that get taken to another country in a container ship. Those things happen rarely, like what you see in the movie. The most common ones are from those broken families, or even more common than this, and this is so important. This is so important for all of our audience. The chances of your child being taken to another country is very, very low. The chances of your child being abused in your own home or one of your neighbors or one of your family members is very, very high, very high. Literally 1 in every 4 women that you know, 1 in every 4 has admitted to being a victim of sexual violence as a child. As a child, 1 in every 4. I believe the number's a lot higher because as we've done our healing retreats with a lot of these women, we have found that the numbers upwards of 50% or more were abused as children, and a huge percent, 60, 70% at some time in their life had been a victim. And so having a relationship with your children that is such that they can easily come to you and say, "Hey, Mom, I feel uncomfortable when you have me hug Uncle Harry because he just makes me feel weird when I hug him," and take it as it is. Don't try to push back on her intuitions, right? Or I don't like it when I go to this friend's house because her friend, her brother like taps me on my butt a lot when I'm there. Or our babysitter's showing us pornography and she says that we should trust her more than you. These are grooming behaviors. These are serious things that your kids need to feel comfortable coming to you. And if something does happen, hey, some older kids that were at school, they held me down, they touched me. Having a relationship with them where they can come to you comfortably and not feel dirty, not feel bad, not feel like they're in trouble and share with you, you can immediately get them the help that they need. The travesty is the fact that the average person doesn't speak about their child abuse until the average age is 52 years old. That's my age. I've got grandchildren, right? And holding that pain in that long comes out in low self-esteem, in anger issues, in depression. And I'll tell you a scary number. We talked about how 1 in every 4 women statistically have talked about being abused as a child. The number with men is a little bit less. It's 1 in 5. It's still pretty high. 1 in 5 of all men say that they've been a victim of sexual violence at some time in their life. And 1/4 of them, it was under the age of 10 years old. This is a massive problem. Now, here's what happens, especially with the men. Now, God bless them. 2/3 of all people who have experienced that trauma as a child, 2/3 of them never pass it on. 2/3 of them grow up to be protectors of innocence, of ensuring that pain never gets transferred on to other children because of what they had to go through. However, 1 out of every 3 people, if not given the love, the help, the healing that they need in their teenage years and their young adult years, 1 out of every 3 ends up becoming a contact offender, passing that trauma on in the form of physical abuse and sometimes sexual abuse of a child. And so the purpose of liberating humanity is more of a global approach to fixing that problem as a whole. The Child Liberation Foundation is still focused on child trafficking specifically, right? And child trafficking and helping these children heal that are in the safe houses, et cetera, and building these build-a-kits, all of these different beautiful things Child Liberation Foundation is doing. The liberating humanity is, how do we fix the problem that's creating the problem, right? For years I thought, where the hell is this coming from? We've got this massive tsunami of demand for people that are looking for sex with a child. Where in the world does somebody get to that level of depravity? Well, guess what, guys? that level of depravity exists in all of us at some level. We're like, oh no, I'm not even close to that. Yeah. Did you look at pornography? Yeah, most people do. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to become a pedophile, but the very second that we take a woman from a divine feminine to an object, we start going down a dark road, right? The second that we're commoditizing somebody and seeing them as an object of desire to fulfill my own carnal interests at their expense in any way, then we start going down in that same negative energy, right? And and that's why we have to take a step back and as adults say, okay, what are the links in the chain? We want to break this chain of child abuse way before it ever gets to that last link in that chain is the abuse of a child. It's the trafficked child or the abused child in your home. We never want anybody to get close to that last link. But what's the link before that? What leads to it? Is it child pornography? Possibly, right? And what leads to that one? Is it hardcore? Is it abuse in the home? Is it anger? Is it unresolved trauma? There's so many things that we need to have these adult conversations and say, okay, where are we as humanity as a whole? And why have we gotten to the point where this is the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world? Why? Why are we here? What are we allowing to come into our homes and our media, our social media, our movies, all of this crap that's coming in? How is it affecting us? What does our moral compass look like compared to what it was 10 years ago? And why has it changed? Those are all conversations that we need to have to fix the demand side.
Well, you just rattled off some huge, huge numbers. And what's surprising to me is that many people being affected by this, and yet there being such little awareness about, this problem. So it's like that doesn't really make sense. Everybody should be talking about this and focused on this because of the number of people that have been affected by it. But for whatever reason, that doesn't seem to be the case.
Well, and so many people that have dealt with it themselves have so much shame that's tied around, especially men. Guys very seldom talk about their abuse as a child. They're like, oh, if I talk about that thing that happened to me with my uncle when I was 8, if I talk about that, it'll make me less of a man. No, it won't. You were 8. That was a horrible thing that happened to you from somebody that was dealing with a lot of pain themselves. Their pain doesn't justify what they did to you in any way, but it doesn't define you. It doesn't define you today. And the simple act of talking about it, of releasing it, of saying, hey, this is something that's super heavy that I've never talked to anybody. Just talk to your spouse. You don't have to tell the whole world about it on your social media, right? Talk to your spouse about it. The simple act of talking about it takes the chances of that coming out in those negative behaviors of anger and physical abuse and sexual abuse, et cetera, that takes those chances of them coming out way down, way, way, way down, just by talking about it. And so if we can get over that stigma and not have the average age of somebody talking about their child abuse being 52 years old, right? Have the average age being 14 years old instead, or 12 years old, or 21, whatever it is. If we can help people heal before it starts just cankering their life in so many ways, we will save millions of children. We'll save millions of children if we can stop that generational abuse at the core, at the root right there.
That's awesome. So everybody, I get it. You got to focus on your home, your family. And if everybody did that, right, that would be huge. What else could somebody who maybe has a little bit more, want to help in the situation, if they go to your website, is there anything that they can do? Is there,
Absolutely. There's so many things. We have teams. We have still teams of operators that are doing undercover work. A lot of them are former Green Berets, Navy SEALs that have their own independent foundations that we fund them through the Child Liberation Foundation. And I will say this too, I donate of my own money into the Child Liberation Foundation, enough to cover the overhead of the administration overhead. So that every dollar that comes in from donors into the Child Liberation Foundation, every dollar is going to help directly to the cause, either in programs that they're putting together or in the kits for the kids or the safe houses or in the actual sting operations that we're helping to fund with these other organizations. So those are all things that people can do to help from that standpoint. If somebody speaks multiple languages and they're a child trauma therapist, we'd love to hear from them. Reach out to us. There's, if you've got skills that you think can be used on the healing side, I will say that we had over 300 special forces guys all try out with this one thing just to go undercover. Everybody, let's go undercover. Of those 300, we had like 30 that were even questionable that could make it. 3 of them we took. Undercover work is a very different animal than when you've got night vision goggles and you've got a sniper on the roof behind you. I mean, you're using your bare hands and you're in some pretty heinous places. But like I said earlier, that's not what's going to fix the problem. Pulling 20 children out of hell, yes, you're making a massive impact in the lives of those children. However, if we as society are not doing enough to curb the demand side, then we've created a vacuum. And 20 more children or 30 more children will be sucked back in to fulfill the demand. We've got to fix the demand side. Otherwise, rescuing kids is going to be fruitless. We're going to be doing it forever, ever, ever. And so, yes, if somebody wants to help out in that way, I would love personally, I would love help on getting on more bigger podcasts. If you've got connections with big influencers, please reach out to me. And you can go right onto my social media. You just type in liberating.humanity. And you can find me on Instagram, anywhere else, and DM me there. I would love to connect. Or if you have some big stages, if you're helping to put together a conference and you've got like 300-400, real estate developers or business owners or whatever else, and you need a keynote speaker, I promise I will be the most inspirational, maybe not inspirational. They're all gonna cry when I'm done, right? And it will be the most memorable of the entire conference. And we will together find ways where we can collaborate, with their businesses and stuff and figure out how to fight this problem on a global scale. And so those are all wonderful things. You can find us on liberatinghumanity.com. There's a lot of tools that you can use. In fact, we're partnering with guys who have programs. And if you got programs that are fantastic, then we'd love to partner with you. Programs on everything from self-defense, some things you can learn online with some of the best trainers that I've trained with over the years. We're putting a lot of their programs there. Some healing practitioners in meditation and breath work and how to get yourself into that theta state and release some of that trauma, et cetera. For people that really want to go deep, we sponsor a lot of fully immersive transformational healing retreats in Latin America, where people come in for 4 or 5 days and spend $3,000 or $4,000. But we go deep into working through what that 2.0 version of you needs to look like and shedding all of that crap from your past that's holding you back. And so those are beautiful things that if you're interested in any of those, then please reach out to us on the Liberating Humanity website or Child Liberation website as well.
That's great. And we'll make sure we have a link to that website in the show notes there so people can just click on it and do whatever they feel that they can do to help out in this situation. So this was really, really awesome. So I thought one question about the movie, because maybe if people didn't get a chance to see it in the movie theater, and then now where can you see it now?
It's you can just type in the Sound of Freedom streaming online. You can find a lot of different places. Apple TV has it right now. You can pay $20 and boom, have it forever on your Apple TV. Angel Studios is now opening up opportunities to be able to see it on their streaming site as well. We're signing some deals with some other big online opportunities as well. So you can find it online. Just type in the Sound of Freedom and online streaming, and you'll find a number of different places that you can watch it at home. And I'll say this, if you haven't seen it and you're scared, it's going to be super dark. No, you're going to need some tissues because you're going to cry, but they're going to be happy tears as well as some sad ones. But it's mostly happy when you see the children being brought back to their families and I'll say this: we took 8 different rescue missions and a whole bunch of different operators. When you watch the film, that all didn't happen in Colombia. It happened on a lot of different operations in different countries, and it didn't all happen with those characters. We took a lot of different operators, some really good men and women who were still undercover, and took a lot of different scenarios and put them together into one storyline. For example, the character who plays me, it funded the whole mission. That didn't happen. There was a lot of other guys that helped to fund it. Guys like Glenn Beck had his whole audience that was helping to fund some of those early missions, right? And so to say, okay, there's one guy that funded it all and went undercover, and there's one guy that didn't know, it wasn't. There was a lot of good people. And the thing is, you need to understand is that if you're looking for somebody else to be the savior of the kids or whatever, you're in the wrong boat. You need to, my goal is not to be the guy who goes out and rescues that 10-year-old from the clutches of a trafficker in Honduras anymore. My goal is to help every 20, 30, 40-year-old man or woman go on their own undercover rescue mission and identify that broken, that lost 10-year-old inside of themselves and give them the love that they need to heal so that they can live a life of abundance in all areas. And that's something that we can all do. And as we do that, it will have a direct impact on the kids in the next generation.
Wow. Well, this has been fantastic. Is there anything else you can think of that you want to, throw out there before we go?
I will say this. I'm super grateful for this time here with your audience. We're living in a very interesting time. We're living in a time where the forces of good and the forces of evil are setting themselves out in full display. And each one of us, this isn't a religious conversation, but this is something that we all need to pay close attention to. Each one of us have to make a choice. And how are we going to live our lives? Are we going to stay in this low energy of addiction to pornography and addiction to our social media and addiction to alcohol, addiction, all this stuff? Or are we going to choose to break free from those addictions to our past, to other things? And having a relationship with your creator is the best thing that you can have. And the best thing you can give your children is high self-esteem, knowing who they are, healthy self-esteem, and a relationship with God. Doing those things will help them navigate through all kinds of crap. And I have a book coming out. I have a couple of them coming out. One on the some of the early rescue missions, and then one called "Are You Listening?" with my hand on my heart. Not on my hand on my ear, but my hand on my heart, because every one of these rescue missions, we weren't following logic and protocol. I believe we were being led to the darkest places where these children were being held. And we were able to pull them out and find places to keep our team safe as well. And every single person has access to that still small voice of truth. We just have to turn off all of the noise. We have to get quiet at least once a day and connect to our higher self, to God, to the universe, whatever you want to call it. And in doing so, will help direct your life and keep your children safe in ways that nothing else ever could.
Amen. I believe that. That's excellent advice. Really, really is. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time. I really, really, this is great. And I will make sure that I can get this out to every single person I possibly could. And on both of my LinkedIn and on my YouTube. So hopefully it'll touch a few people. People will reach out to you.
Thank you, Dana. Super, super grateful. Grateful to be on your show.
Well, thank you. And thank you everybody for watching. And we will see you next time. Bye-bye.